What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Finally, here we go. Dangle Bet Celly, the first episode of the season. We are just a week away from puck drop, and I see some people hanging out already, and I couldn't be happier to talk a little hockey with you guys today. As you see, riding solo here today with you guys, our guy, EY, is not around. He'll be back soon, very, very soon. Probably in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll only miss 1 or 2 episodes of EY. We are going to be with you, Dangle Bet Celly, twice a week as per usual, maybe a couple other times as well. It's possible this is more than just a Tuesday and Thursday show. This is year number 3, I do believe, here at FTN Network. If anybody is just stumbling across the show, we appreciate you guys. It's been a long off season. Hockey is finally back. Dangle Bet Celly is a mix of fantasy hockey, just real life NHL chatter, and of course, Dangle Bet Celly. We're going to have some picks and some props every single episode. Today, I just wanted to talk some fantasy hockey stuff with you guys. The draft kit is live over at ftnfantasy.com. It's absolutely free. My rankings can be found over there, ftnfantasy.com. Sleepers, busts, breakouts, undervalued players. We have new faces in old places. Or actually old faces in new places. I mixed that one up for you. Just basically every single, maybe not every player, but every fantasy relevant player that was moved in the offseason via trade or free signing, player profiles about those players, and whether their stock is up or their stock is down on their new team. So today will be a big fantasy hockey show, setting you guys up for your fantasy hockey drafts. On Thursday, we have Matt Larkin joining us from Daily Faceoff, also former of the Hockey News. He's going to join us on Thursday. He's taking part in a 14-team fantasy hockey mock draft that I want to show you guys. We're about halfway through. It's going a little slower than I anticipated. It's tough to find time for 14 people to get into a room and do a draft, but there's always fantasy football industry drafts and fantasy baseball, but there's never really any fantasy hockey industry draft. So this is what I'm calling it. All the results will be in an article. I'm hoping by Thursday. I may just even start that article late tonight, early tomorrow. I still have a couple pieces that I want to share in the draft guide. It's a best ball strategy. We can talk about that on today's episode if you have any questions. But best ball over at NFC, high stakes leagues, draft strategy over there, which I'll be referencing a lot, and Underdog Fantasy. So 2 kind of draft strategy pieces, a free NHL betting guide. I'm going to roll through my predictions with every single division, over under on points from a player standpoint and from a team, over under on like their point totals, or just I have a couple futures already in the tracker. I know a lot of people have reached out to me about last year and things like that. And we've won over 260 units in 3 seasons in the NHL, which I'm pretty happy about. Last year was a bit of a struggle in terms of props. I'm just be straight up with you guys. Like year 1 and year 2, you guys are well aware. The shot prop game, I think we crushed it. It was partly the market, getting Austin Matthews and Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen at like 2.5 shots. Like that was fun. These guys are like 5.5s now. So books have adjusted, but I felt like we kind of hit our stride towards the end of the season, taking some point props and, assist props and things like that. But the goal of this show, again, 4 minutes in, if you're just new, I have links inside the description of this video. It's available on iTunes and Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. If you could rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend, smash the like button on this video, subscribe to our FTN Network YouTube page. We're going to be with you all season. The goal is to be with you every Tuesday and Thursday, and that for sure will happen. Whether EY has a guest or I have a guest, pretty lock and loaded for Tuesday, Thursdays myself. Can't speak for Eric. He's a super busy dude. He wants to be on this show here with you today. He's like 15 hours ahead. He's just not able to make it work. But we will be breaking down all the Tuesdays and Thursdays games, giving you picks and props, goal scorers for every single game, taking your fantasy hockey questions, taking your betting questions. If you want a betting package over at ftnbets.com, you can use promo code Meaney, save yourself a little bit of cash. Not only will you get my picks, you'll get everybody's picks and props across all sports, right? MLB, playoffs, NFL week 5 here, NBA's around the corner. Picks from everybody, tools, projections, Discord channel. it's going to help you in your fantasy football league. Just seeing those projections, they're absolutely on point. That's courtesy of Jeff Ratcliffe. So if you are looking for the betting package, by all means, promo code Meaney, save yourself a little bit of cash. But you see the guide links inside the description of this video, though it's all free. The fantasy hockey kit, it's got sleepers, busts, breakouts, my rankings, some player profiles on guys that have switched teams, switched jerseys. And I'm going to share a little bit of that with you guys here today. On this episode, we're going to roll through some of my favorite targets and get into some busts and some sleepers and players to avoid. And on Thursday's episode will be a betting preview. And then next Tuesday, it's here. It's hockey time, so we'll be able to give some picks and some props. But Thursday's episode will be a betting preview. We'll roll through the divisions and give some, playoff teams and Stanley Cup and, some of my favorite player futures and team futures as well on that episode. But like I said, look for it in the guide and ftmbets.com, a free betting preview, and it will be detailed. It'll go through probably be a lot of picks, but I'll rank them into like favorites, second tier, third tier, fourth tier. What can I say? And, I like hockey and I feel like there's some edges out there to attack. So we'll get on some of that Thursday's episode in that free betting guide. So I want to say hello to the crew. There's some people in here that have been waiting and hanging on. Dustin, my guy, welcome back, guys. At some point, can you talk about your draft approach with goalies and defensemen, any late goalies and late D-men I should target for standard Yahoo League? So that's something we'll definitely address here on this show in just a little bit. Quick version of that is what I will say, and I know some people are going to be upset and sour with me when it comes to some of my busts and targets and things like that. I just think it's very important, and this may seem very obvious, but it's very important to know your scoring system, to know your settings, right? Guys that you feel like it's almost like separating real life from fantasy hockey. Like we'll get into Quinn Hughes in a little bit. Him finishing T3, T2 in points per game among defensemen is great for real life. It's great for your fantasy hockey league that just counts goals, assists, and points, maybe power play points. But if you're in a high stakes league over at NFC or a league like Best Ball, where you are accounting for hits, you are accounting for shots, block shots, these are important statistics. Quinn Hughes did not finish as a top 15 defenseman in that format. He did not finish as a top 30 defenseman in fantasy points per game in that format. Now, high stakes leagues, NFHC has incorporated a bonus for defensemen. That's great. Overall, that helps. You want to pick maybe these guys a little bit earlier, but it doesn't do a whole lot at the position. Now, it will make Quinn Hughes a little bit more valuable because he will get that bonus point for the goal and assist where he doesn't contribute in those other categories like hits and blocks. So it's very important to know your settings. If you're just in a straight head-to-head category league with your buddies, Quinn Hughes is not so bad in that type of format. But if you're playing in a points league and you are getting points for other things, Quinn Hughes is, I'm just using him as an example, shouldn't be a top 5 defenseman coming off the board. We may view him as a top 5 defenseman overall in the NHL in terms of statistics and points, but you got to separate these things. I'm somebody who likes to get a top 10 goalie. I don't want to take a goalie in the first round, and you'll see in my rankings, I don't have any goalies ranked in the first round. There needs to be probably a good 15 forwards before I start to consider goalies in the first. You hear people say voodoo all the time, and that's true. You can certainly grab some goalies off the waiver wire and get lucky that way and play some matchups. There's always going to be one or two that pop up. Gustafsson was one of those guys last year. Phillip from Minnesota, he finished as a top 10 goalie. He wasn't really getting drafted in the leagues. Marc-Andre Fleury was getting drafted. Gustafsson has a really good season. So there's some goalies that, you could get lucky off the waiver wire. Last year was a year that, Shesterkin didn't really pan out. Andre Vasilevsky didn't pan out. These were guys that were the first and second goalies off the board. Now Vasilevsky is dealing with an injury, but ultimately I like to get a top 10 goalie and then I'll wait it out a little bit. I think there's some duos and some tandems that you can roll with this year, maybe a tandem in LA or Vegas or New Jersey, things like that. But I wouldn't be reaching on goalies. I'll tell you that. I wouldn't be reaching on goalies in the first round. and we'll talk about the strategy throughout. But I think you want to try to get yourself a top 10 goalie, maybe one that you think will break out. But I have some targets for you, Dustin. I got some goalie targets, some defenseman targets, mid, late, early rounds, things like that. We'll get to all that stuff here on this episode. Troy's in, of course, our guy. He's got some Blue Jacket stuff for us. Troy is a friend of the show. In fact, all these people here are friends and family members of Dangle Bet Celly here, and we do appreciate you. Columbus Blue Jackets number is 5-5. Patrick Laine on the ice at center. Yes, he's got some goals. He's got some shot attempts. This is one thing we know about Patrick Laine is when he is on the ice, he is usually producing. The shot attempts are usually there for him. But I don't know if he's a big target of mine. Troy, he says Laine did not go back to Finland. He stayed in Columbus to work out at a house with Adam Fantilli. That's good. It's great. It's great stuff. I think there's reasons to be excited about Columbus this year, for sure. Right? They got some nice young forwards. They got Adam Fantilli. I got like a revamped defense here. I still have some questions about their goaltending, but ultimately they should be an improved squad. But I hate to break it to you, Troy. Laine is off my list. I just can't draft Patrick Laine. He just there's some injuries there, and I just it's just not really for me. But we are excited for you, and we're excited to have DBC back. Thank the hockey gods. Dangle Bet Celly is back. We appreciate it. Look at this. It's got lots of Blue Jacket stuff here. On fire, Columbus Blue Jackets players in preseason. Texier, Laine, Fantilli. Man, Fantilli's going to be, you guys lucked out there with Fantilli. He's in the Ducks, I think, will regret that ultimately. Lutessa, let's go. Troy, thank you for all your hard work and dedication. You have the best hockey show ever, man. You're the best. You guys are fantastic. Ready for some shot props to come rolling, and we do appreciate it. You guys are always been supportive, and I love answering some of your guys' questions and to help you guys get set up for your fantasy hockey league. So we got a question here from Troy, and then we'll get into some rankings and things like that. So I want to show you guys the mock draft probably first, and this can tie into maybe some of the strategy questions that you guys do have. So Troy says he has the 8th pick in an 8-team bangers league. So you'll hear the term bangers leagues, and that's really leagues with hits and leagues with blocks. Some leagues with penalty minutes, don't like to play those ones personally, but you will see guys like the Kachucks. You know, Brady Tkachuk has been a top 10 player in fantasy hockey bangers leagues over the past 2 seasons, leagues with hits and blocks and shots. I mean, he's a guy that shoots the puck a lot and he throws his body around. And of course, those that play in penalty minutes leagues, he'll drop the gloves for you as well. Thinking one of the Kachucks, if available, and either Hughes, Rantanen, or Elias Pettersson, please give me your value feedback. So 8th pick overall in an 8-team bangers league. I don't think like there's a bad pick in the first couple rounds, and I'm just going to show you guys the mock here. And I don't think you need to adjust your strategy, your early round strategy too much in bangers leagues. Like there's just guys that you can get later on in drafts that can help you out. I think if you start your draft with like a Mikko Rantanen or a Mikko Rantanen, Mitch Marner, and say Evan Bouchard or a goalie or something like that, you'll have to adjust as the draft goes on because your first 2 players, Mikko Rantanen and Mitch Marner, aren't guys that are going to throw their body around. But they're still really good players. Like they're 100-point players. They're going to contribute on the power play. They're good first and second round picks. But, you know, you're going to lose those hitting categories, or you're not going to get as many points as other people who have like guys that are going to hit, those touch them all type players. I get a few of those guys that I will address here on the show and help you out. This is how the mock has gone. And I don't know if this is too small for you guys to see. I promise this week over in the FTN Fantasy Hockey Draft Kit, this will be in an article and I will walk through my thoughts, but I'm going to walk them through here pretty early. I'm just going to give some love to some of the people that are in this draft. So Eric Young up at the top. Of course, you're well aware of my co-host here at FTN Network of Dangle Bet Celly. EY started us off with no surprise at Connor McDavid. Pete Jensen, NHL Jensen, our guy from NHL.com, co-host of the Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Anna Dua and Nick Alberga. All 3 are in here in this draft. Leon Draisaitl was Pete's pick at number 2. The Golden Muzzy, Nick Alberga. Unfortunately, the Vasilevsky injury happened after. Of course, this is a slow mock draft. Again, playing this out, it's gone on here for over a week. I would like to have this wrapped up a little bit earlier than what it is, but it's all good. I do appreciate everybody jumping in here, and some people have written about at their websites that they're at, and I really do love seeing that. So Nathan McKinnon with the third pick here. So far, so good. This is exactly how I have it, how I would play it. McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, and Matthews in the fourth spot. Again, my colleague, this time Kenneth Lee, KLE 18 at FTN Network and the Twitter machine. And of course, Lee and myself will have a lot of, as well as Griffin, Griff Dog. Love the Swanson, man. He's a stud. Got to get him on Dangle Bet Celly a little bit more here in the future. He's going to be writing some DFS articles again this year for us over the weekends. So that's the top four for me. Those are the four guys. That's the exact order for me. And after this, it does get a little bit tricky. I don't think that there really is a bad pick. I lean David Pastrnak in that 5 spot, and you're going to hear me talk about the Boston Bruins on this show and a few busts, and they're going to regress. Like, you got to feel like they're going to regress. First of all, they had the best NHL season of all time last year. The best, right? Nobody had more wins. Nobody had more points. But think about the players lost here. They lose their captain, Patrice Bergeron. They lose their second line center in David Krejci. They traded Taylor Hall. They didn't sign Tyler Bertuzzi. They didn't sign Dmitry Orlov. They lost Connor Clifton. So this is a very different team, and they didn't replace a lot of those players. Like, their big moves are bringing in Milan Lucic and bringing in James Van Riemsdyk. It's going to be a step back here for the Boston Bruins. I would say that anyways, even if they had Krejci and Bergeron, I would say the Bruins are probably not going to be as good. But listen, this is a massive difference. You are losing your first and second line centers, and you're going to Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle. Now, both of those players are probably going to break out. I think they're good targets in fantasy. They're going to be surrounded by good players, but Pass is still going to be fine. Maybe he doesn't have as many points, but he's going to play a lot. He loves to shoot the puck. He's still going to be a guy that puts 7, 8, 9 shot attempts towards the goal a game. I love goals, and goals dry up. And what I will say, again, know your settings. If you get more points for shots and for goals, I would rather have a shooter. I like Jack Hughes to break out. We were correct in Jack Hughes and Tage Thompson breaking out last season. These are really good targets this season. And I don't mind Anna's pick. Again, I don't think that there's a bad pick here in the first round. For the iTunes and Spotify listeners, Jack Hughes at 5, Mikko Rantanen at 6, Matthew Tkachuk at 7, David Pastrnak at 8, Nikita Kucherov at 9, Brady Tkachuk at 10, Kirill the Thrill, Dollar Bill Kaprizov at 11, Jason Robertson at 12, Elias Pettersson at 13, Kale McCarr at 14. I don't think there's a bad pick there. I really don't. It's all about your preference. My preference would be the goal scorer, the shooter. I'm into shots. Obviously, we talk about shot props, but I'm into shooters. I'm into goal scorers. I typically lean with them more than pass first guys. And I kind of view that as Jack Hughes, even though he likes to shoot the puck as well. And he's in for a 100-point season. The Devils are going to roll. I love all their players. I like absolutely all of their players. I think they're all great targets. I think the Devils may just win the Stanley Cup this year. Like, spoiler alert, I'm going to be giving them a lot of love on Thursday. But Jack Hughes, Mikko Rantanen, I think for you, Troy, if you're in a bangers league, and in this particular format, I would say that this is a bangers league format. It's a goal, assist, power play points, shots, hits, blocks. We're counting all of that stuff. So Brady Tkachuk, just to give you a little bit of an example of that type of format, last year, the top 10 skaters in this format, goals, assists, power play points, shots, hits, and blocks. McDavid 1, Draisaitl 2, Pasta 3. So maybe he doesn't score 61 goals, but he's probably going to flirt with 400 shots again. Brady Tkachuk at 4, Nathan McKinnon at 6, Nikita Kucherov. Nathan McKinnon at 5, Nikita Kucherov at 6, Mikko Rantanen at 7, Matthew Tkachuk at 8, Jason Robertson at 9, Austin Matthews at 10. JT Miller just behind him. I think he is an underrated player in bangers leagues, and he loves to shoot the puck. He's good on the power play, and he blocks a lot of shots. He's just an undervalued, sneaky fantasy hockey asset. I don't think he's a first-round talent, but this is a guy that does not go in the first 2 rounds, and he always returns value. He started off as really, really, really slow last season. but was able to, pick it up in the second half of the season, return value. And again, it does depend on your scoring system and your fantasy points. I don't even see JT Miller here on the board. Where did Miller go? It doesn't matter. We'll find it eventually. If anybody else sees it, you guys can let me know. But I'm not seeing him get taken at all in the first. Oh, there he is. End of the second. Near the end of the second. 11th pick there. So 14-team league. It's like a 12-team. He's going in the third round. I think he's a good pick. Let's get back to the first round here. So Jack Hughes there to Anna of NHL. We have Matt Larkin here with pick number 6 to him is Mikko Rantanen, and Matt is from Daily Faceoff, M. Larkin on the Twitter machine. We're going to have him on the show on Thursday. Matthew Tkachuk to my old buddy Neil Parker from Sportsbook Review at Neil Parker Bets. We have Jesse Black from SDPN Sports going with Pasternak. We have Hey Shay, my former colleague. Of course, Shayna Goldman is fantastic. FSW Writer of the Year, FSWA. I do believe back-to-back years. She is, of course, from The Athletic. And then she went with Nikita Kucherov. I went with Brady Tkachuk here. It was really between Brady Tkachuk and Jason Robertson. Again, I don't think that there is a bad pick in the first round. If Pasta was there, I would have went Pasta. If Matthew Tkachuk was there, I would have Matthew Tkachuk. I do like Brady Tkachuk a touch more than Nikita Kucherov in this setting, but there's not a bad pick here in this first round. Dom Luszczyszyn, also from The Athletic, former colleague. Dom is fantastic. He picked Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov with pick 11. I know he's a big Kaprizov guy. Jason Robertson, and I think Dmitry Filipovich here is absolutely crushing this podcast, the Hockey PDO cast. He's from EP Rinkside at Dim Filipovich. I've done some stuff with him, and he is just super sharp. I really like this build that he has going on. He's got like a hero RB. It's like a hero defenseman type strategy of Evan Bouchard, who is really going to break out this season. I would say he's going to get north of 60 points, and he was electric in the playoffs last year. It's starting off with Robertson, Thompson, Bouchard, Clayton Keller, Jordan Kyrou, 2 players that broke out last year, in particular Kyrou. Forsberg, who is completely buried down draft boards, whether this one here at Fantrax, Yahoo, ESPN. It's because he was hurt and he's just going way too low. He is a target of mine. He's in the draft kit as well. Carter Verhaeghe broke out last season. Jesper Bratt going fairly low in drafts. A pass first player. I typically like to draft shooters, but he is going to be inside of top 6. It's absolutely lethal and loaded offensively. And this is probably too low for Jesper Bratt here in what is round 8 in a 14-team league. So good value there. Martin Necas as well. Matthew Barzal, another pass first guy, but a guy that is also buried down ADPs and draft boards. And again, just know your settings. But Dimitri's got some shooters here in Robertson and Tage Thompson and Clayton Keller and Philip Forsberg and Verhaeghe, where he could really afford to get some balance and get some pass first assist guys here. So he's building a very good squad. No goalies just yet, so I'll be interested to see what he does with his team. But Elias Pettersson to Slim Cliffy, my guy, Michael Clifford from Dauber Hockey. At Slim Cliffy, and then producer Drew, former colleague of mine over at FNTSY, also working with Steve Dangle on the regular, and Jesse Blake over at SDPN Sports. He goes with his old buddy Cale Makar as the Avs guy. I would think that's a fair spot. I would still go Stützle and Tage Thompson over Cale Makar, and then I would think about Makar, but he's going to go earlier than that. And where Drew is in this spot here, 14-team leagues, you can see he was very aggressive in goal with Shesterkin. He knew he wasn't going to get a pick for quite some time, and then he doubled down with another goalie in Linus Ullmark. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll just continue to roll through here. Stützle, I love. Tage Thompson, we love on this show. Timo Meier. I went with Mitch Marner. I was hoping to get Meier, Tage Thompson, or Stützle. They all go before. And there was really no debate here for me. I go, he's not going to have the same, firepower in terms of shots and hits as Ovechkin. Crosby and Ovechkin are good targets, but I just decided to go with Marner here. It's a loaded top 6 in Toronto. He had 99 points last year. I like the top 6 better this year in Toronto, and he's a beast on the power play. He's just a hell of a player, and I got some grit there in round 1. With Tkachuk. Yossi here is the second defenseman off the board. I agree with that. Crosby, Ovechkin, Sorokin would actually be number 1 for me. I have him number 1 ahead of my rankings, but in the same tier as Shesterkin. And same, I would say that's a tier in its own. Now that Vasilevsky is hurt, Jake Ottinger would be in that next tier with Georgiev for me. And I am not as big on Allmark, but I'll talk about that in just a little bit. It's more so with the Bruins, right? The Bruins are going to regress just a touch this season. He's not going to put up the same sort of numbers. It really doesn't have much to do with the playoff performance, but here we are. Dahlin as the third defenseman off the board. Completely agree with that. And there's JT Miller, right? You may think that that's a little early for him, but again, he touches a lot of categories. If it's just goals and assists and points, then maybe you're thinking about William Nylander or Braden Point or Mika Zibanejad and Panarin over him. But he does touch a lot of categories. Of course, we mentioned Vasilevsky and the injury, and we'll talk about where I have him ranked. It's outside the top 10 at the goalie position. I would really just kind of cross him off my list. I just don't want to deal with goalies that are hurt. You start the season, with your goalie on IR. He's going to probably still go as like top 6th, 7th round because it's Vasilevsky. If there's a setback, you kind of screwed, and then you have to draft 3, maybe 4 goalies in your draft. So I just typically cross these guys off. That's it. I think he's good and he could bounce back, but I just don't deal with him. Jake Ottinger, Erik Karlsson here as the 4th defenseman off the board. I'm fine with it. I'll get into Karlsson in a little bit. Actually, you know what? Just discuss him now. Erik Karlsson, he had a fantastic season. Clearly, I mean, he hit the century mark. It had been the first time since Brian Leach had hit the century mark years ago. I think it would be a mistake to just assume that he could do it again. You know what I mean? Like he's 32 years old. We hadn't seen a defenseman hit the 100-point mark since the early 90s when Leach did it. And I don't think it's just as safe to say, oh, well, now he's in Pittsburgh with better players and Crosby and Malkin and Gensel. He's just obviously going to have more points. Like I don't think that's going to happen. When Karlsson went to San Jose, everybody in the industry was ranking Karlsson and Burns as like 1 and 2, but they cut into each other. And so with Letang there, how does that first power play look? Is Letang just completely off of it? If that's the case, then Karlsson, is definitely like an 80-point player again, a point per game guy. But if Letang is on it and they roll with like a Gensel, Malkin, and Crosby, they'll cut into each other. Letang is still a good defenseman. He's still got some offensive upside. Karlsson was asked to do a lot last year. He played a lot of minutes. He blocked a lot of shots. It's not going to be the same here in San Jose or in Pittsburgh. He's not going to be asked to do as much. Like the points will still be there, but don't draft Karlsson just assuming he's going to be a 100-point player. I would like to wait it out. If you told me that I can get Evan Bouchard a round later, that's the way that I would go. I would rather Bouchard and grab another forward. Again, this is nothing on EY. It's a 14-team league. You pick on the ends. You got to get a defenseman and a goalie. You're not going to be able to pick for quite some time. So I totally get it. He gets his guy Saros as well. I understand it. But I would pass on Karlsson, Adam Fox for an Evan Bouchard. If it meant getting Bouchard a touch later, that would be the way that I would go. Again, Adam Fox, then just know your settings. I will reference one more time. I'll probably reference it in a touch. But high stakes, it's just very important to fully understand what you're getting into in terms of a bangers leagues, a points league, and things like that. Because when it comes to busts, I'll show you guys a few in a little bit. But where Quinn Hughes finished last year, like here were your top 12 defensemen in high stakes leagues: goals, assists, hits, blocks, power play points, shorthanded points, and shots on goal. This is the order: Yossi, Makar, Karlsson, Dahlin, Karlsson from Washington, the Eric, number 3. Again, these are points per game. John missed some time. Hamilton, Montour, Letang, Morrissey, Chikrin, Sergachev, Pietrangelo. Hedman at 23, Sergachev at 11, Adam Fox at 31, Quinn Hughes at 34, and Morgan Riley at 47. So what we know about Fox, Hughes, and Riley, they're really good defensemen. They're great defensemen. They quarterback really good power plays, especially in Toronto and in New York. But just be wary. Like Fox, that's a little early for me. It's a little early. You got to know your settings as a guy that finished 31st in fantasy points per game at defense. So I typically don't draft defensemen early, Dustin. As you can see, my team here in the 10 spot, Matthew Tkachuk, Mitch Marner, Kyle Connor, Rupe Hintz, Alex Tuck, Adrian Kempe. There's a theme here. I like shooters. Marner's not one, but I know Tkachuk and Connor and Hintz and Tuck and Kempe are. I went with Gustafsson as my first goalie. I went Jonas Korpisalo as my second goalie. I got Drew Doughty here. Drew Doughty is a defenseman that did finish ahead of Fox and Hughes and Riley in fantasy points per game on that number one power play. Still has a lot to offer, shoots the puck, throws his body around, blocks shots. Matheson, same sort of deal. We'll get into him in a little bit. So I like to wait it out. Yeah, would I like to have an Evan Bouchard? I'd love to have an Evan Bouchard. I'd love to have a Rasmus Dahlin. I'd love to have two of those guys, but I'll probably have more Bouchard than I will Dahlin because maybe I can get him in the third or the fourth round as opposed to spending a second round pick on a defenseman. I just like to wait it out. And if you drafted Cale Makar last year, you got a little bit unlucky, but he didn't return value. You were probably behind the eight ball with a first round pick and Cale Makar and didn't play a lot of time there. And you didn't have the same type of offensive firepower. Those elite goal scorers, like those first 15 to 20 goal scorers or forwards that you should be after in the first couple of rounds. So there's some defensemen that we'll talk about later that can touch some categories for you. But yeah, I'd stay clear a little bit. I think of Carlson and Fox. And Quinn Hughes. These guys are going a little bit too early for me. But again, setting dependent. William Nylander here. Georgiev, Stamkos, Zibanejad, Braden Point. Panarin's one of those guys, that doesn't really check boxes for me in bangers leagues, but that he's going to get a point per game. Svechnikov, I think maybe a touch early here, coming off the significant knee injury. Unsure if he's going to be ready to go opening day. It sounds like possibility. But maybe not a full go. I think just a little early. I prefer Kyle Connor ahead of him, Alex DeBrincat ahead of him, Clayton Keller ahead of him, even Zach Hyman, who Shayna got a little bit later on. I would rather have, depending on your settings. Connor to me, Barkov, a good real life player. I usually cross him off my list in fantasy leagues. He just doesn't shoot the puck enough, and again, there's some other guys that I think are a little bit better. And it's fantasy, right? It's where you got to separate real life from fantasy. He doesn't check a lot of boxes in high stakes leagues for me. Bouchard, loved the pick. Was hoping he came back to me there. I was thinking about Bouchard over Connor, but I was like, we'll see. But Bouchard comes back to me, I'll get him, and Dimitri's all over it. DeBrincat, like the landing spot for him. And at times last year in Ottawa, he wasn't playing on that first power play. He's definitely going to play on that first PP in Detroit. Jack Eichel here, Linus Ullmark. An easy fade for me this year. I will not be drafting him as like a top 5 goalie. What is he here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Goalie number 7. He's outside my top 10, I do believe. There's going to be some splitting between him and Swayman, and this is not going to be the same Bruins team. I know they're well coached and they got some dudes there, but I just don't think they'll be the same squad. I think they'll make the playoffs, but they're not going to be top 3, 4 team in the East, I don't believe. Hamilton, I like. Keller, I love. We'll get into some of these guys in just a touch that are my targets. Tavares, Rupe Hintz, Hyman, I like. Heiskanen, I like. No problem with it. Again, not going to touch those banger leagues categories for you, but you get him a little bit later on than Fox. Nugent Hopkins, 100 points last season. First time, maybe a little bit of a regression, but he's locked into a top 6 role on the power play. Oilers are going to score a bunch of goals. They may not operate at a NHL history, like an NHL historic 32% from last year, but 30 may be the floor. Nugent Hopkins is a good pick, even knowing that there'll be some regression coming. He's locked in playing with Draisaitl or McDavid. The bottom 6 in Edmonton is weak. I feel like they got away from Ryan Nugent Hopkins as like a third line player and just kind of rolling him out as like a second line player, top 6. He's just too good. Hughes in there. We talked about him already. Hellebuck is a fine target. Winnipeg is going to regress here a touch as well. I think, with Wheeler out the door, I think it's only a matter of time for, Scheifele's out the door, maybe even Hellebuck out the door. This is a guy that could be traded at the deadline. But the reason I do like him is, and partly because why people say goalies are voodoo, they'll lose their jobs, but getting a top 10 goalie and making sure you get a goalie that's going to get a lot of starts, right? Ottinger, Georgiev, Soros, Sorokin, Shesterkin. These guys are going to start a ton. Connor Hellebuck is going to get, as much as he can handle. He's going to see a lot of rubber, which is good, in leagues with saves. I wouldn't base everything on wins. They're not everything. Save percentage is very, very key. I would look at that statistic probably more than anything. And goals against average, some of these numbers will be a little bit skewed. It'll probably be a higher GAA than others, but he'll see a lot of rubber and he'll make up with his save percentage. And you just know he's going to play basically every time Winnipeg touches the ice. Nico Hischier, I think, is a good target. Marchand's a bust for me. Wouldn't touch him. Way too early here for Brad Marchand. I'll get into that in just a little bit. Connor Bedard. So Connor Bedard here into the 4th round, make it a 5th round if it's a 12-team league. I think that this is fair. I would take Bedard over Marchand, over a lot of these defensemen, Hughes and Heiskanen. I would take him. I really do like Nico Hischier, but probably take Connor Bedard over him as well. I would take Connor Bedard, I think, over Eichel. Eichel is great in the playoffs, but he's had some injury history, and I kind of leave Bedard there just a touch. But I think that this spot is fair for where he's going. I've seen him go much earlier in best ball and underdog, and I guess that's different with no waiver wires, and you're just really getting a guy that you absolutely love, and sometimes you just have to reach on a player. But even Aho probably shouldn't go after Bedard, but I think this is this is fair. Aho, Jake Gensel there. Samsonov is a good target. I like that. Pete got his 2 goalies there in the first 6 rounds, first 5 rounds. He got a defenseman there. So a balanced attack, he's able to, maybe get Bedard because he got Draisaitl there. He's got one of the GOATs. Hedman, I actually like Sergachev ahead of Hedman. You see that they kind of go back to back here. Hedman really saw decline in ice time and power play time. Sergachev saw an increase in ice time and power play time. I can't tell you with confidence that Sergachev is going to be the guy in the first power play unit. They may go back to Hedman. They may use them both. It'll kind of flip-flop. But I think, Cooper was onto something, giving that extra ice time to Sergachev as Hedman's getting a little bit older, a lot of miles on the tires. But they're both fine picks. But Sergachev is better in a Bangers League because he hits more. He may block a few more shots, and if he is going to get a majority of the PP1 time, that's a big boost, as opposed to Hedman getting it. But I think Tampa's another team that we're starting to see a little bit of a regression from the squad. Kevin Fiala, Cole Caulfield here, Dylan Larkin, Josh Morrissey, a great Bangers League, defenseman to go after, but of course coming off a significant injury, and the Jets, I don't want to say rebuild, almost like a little bit of a retool. Bo Horvat here, Alex Tuck, Moritz Satter is a great Bangers League guy to target as well. Jordan Kyrou, Jeff Skinner, Johnny Hockey, not really for me, more of a pass first guy. Sorry, Troy. I'd rather Philip Forsberg and Adrian Kempe than Johnny Hockey. Matt Boldy, though, Drew backed it up with a shooter. Claude Giroux, I think a good target, right? He's got a little bit of a send stack going on here with Stützle and Giroux. They may not play 5 and 5 together, but you can see that later on, Chychrun and Shabbat. So the Sens are going to score a lot of goals. It makes sense to kind of stack, even though this isn't best ball, just to get some pieces and kind of piggyback off other dudes. Forsberg, great target here. McAvoy, I don't mean to kind of crap on some of Dom's picks here. I mean, there's good players that he's drafting, but McAvoy, this is like a case of a good real life defenseman, probably a top 10 defenseman in fantasy hockey in real life, but a guy that's never finished inside the top 10 in fantasy hockey. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but just assume that I am talking about leagues with hits and blocks, high stakes leagues. He wasn't even a top 100 skater in fantasy last season that account for goals, assists, power play points, shots, hits, and blocks. He didn't even finish as the top defenseman on his own team. That was Hampus Lindholm. I'm not saying I'm into Lindholm, but Lindholm's going about 125 picks later on. And I think that McAvoy will be the guy, missing a lot of pieces on the Bruins this year in that first power play, and Bergeron and Krejci. They may roll with just like both defensemen on that first power play, but the Bruins are going to take a step back. McAvoy, 52 and 56 points in back-to-back seasons. He's never had more than 10 goals. He's not a big shooter. He will throw his body around at times. I don't even think he'll finish as a top 20 defenseman in fantasy this year because he didn't last year, and there has to be expected regression here on this squad. So too early for McAvoy. He's one of those guys with Hughes and with Fox, depending on your setting, that I just let other people draft. they are good real life players. Like Pietrangelo finishes a top 10 defenseman. McAvoy didn't even finish as a top 25, right? He likes to shoot a bit more. He throws his body around. He blocks some shots. These are things that you just have to consider. Huberdeau, Carlson, Kane, Malkin, love the Vince Dunn play here. Zach Werenski's buried down draft boards. It's a good play, right? He's going to get all the ice time he can handle. Columbus is revamped offensively. PP1, good stuff there. Letang, Patrick Laine, a touch early. Joe Pavelski here. Kuzmenko, Demko, Buchnevich, Burns, Nurse, Trouba. So now we're getting into some defensemen, some banger league defensemen. Nurse has value in that setting. Trouba is a top 10 defenseman in leagues with hits and blocks, believe it or not, right? He just is. Like, do I want to draft him over Fox? No. But he's a guy that I will consider in the middle part of my draft. And that's how you make up for drafting players in the first few rounds that don't throw their body around or, block a lot of shots. You get these bangers defensemen like a Darnell Nurse, like a Jacob Trouba, like a Seth Jones, like a Drew Doughty. Michael Matheson fits that bill. Jacob Tricken fits that bill. A little bit later on, Noah Dobson, later on in your draft, like a Radko Gudas, Josh Morrissey, Sider. These guys are bangers, defensemen. That's where I like to get my grit from in those bangers leagues. I'll draft some forwards who throw their body around as well, like Brady Tkachuk and I don't know, a Travis Konechny, Evander Kane, Zach Hyman, more so for a shooter. The hits have come down a little bit, but I will draft those types of forwards as well. But I try to get the grit from my blue liners. I think we've done enough here looking at this draft. I don't think that they're, like I said, I walk through some things here, like in terms of busts and things like that. I see a lot of comments and a lot of questions. So we'll dive into some of these and then we'll wrap up with my targets at each position and some busts and things like that. So here we go. Let's get going. Kenny's in the house, and I apologize if it's taken this long to kind of roll through. I see that you asked that question for like 20 minutes ago. Who should I target in the first and second round? I picked 7. I'm not really sure what to do. So I'll go back to this draft. I would just go a couple forwards. I don't think that there's a bad pick here. Picking 7th. So assuming, Matthew Tkachuk, and Matthew Tkachuk may miss the first couple games, but he may not, and he's a warrior, and he's fine. I wouldn't worry about it. You're not going to lose your fantasy hockey season in the first couple weeks. Like Jake Gensel going here, this is an absolute steal for a guy that can score 40 goals. What is this? Round 1, 2, 3, 4. The start of round 5, but really round 6, maybe 7 in a 12 team. He's going to miss the first 5 games of the season. Big deal, right? I wouldn't worry about it too much. He's still a fine target. But here in the first, I would probably, again, my rankings, the link inside the description of this video, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews. We know that those guys are probably going to be gone. I would say the 5th pick could be anyone. It could be any one of these guys, Hughes, Rantanen, Tkachuk. My rankings, I go Pasternak at 5, Matthew Tkachuk at 6, Jason Robertson at 7, Brady Tkachuk at 8, Mikko Rantanen at 9, Nikita Kucherov at 10. I'm a big Jack Hughes fan as well. I need to see him. I think he's a 100-point player this year. I need to see it before I start drafting him over Mikko Rantanen, Nikita Kucherov. Jason Robertson has done it back-to-back years. The grit that comes with Brady Tkachuk and Matthew Tkachuk, the shots and the hits, the power play production. We're splitting hairs. It's the same tier. I'd say if Jack Hughes is available to you, you take him. You want to take him over Kucherov, I'm fine with it. You're not playing in a league with hits and shots. You can take him over Brady Tkachuk. I don't think you can go wrong there, Kenny, with anybody here. If you want to use my rankings as a guideline, overalls are there. You can do that, and that will help you through the draft. I think on the way back, you pick at 7, assuming this is a 12 team, right? You would pick, you'd probably be in this range where if Stützle and Tage Thompson were available to you, I would go that way, followed by Timo Meier. And I think you could start your draft with like a Jack Hughes and a Timo Meier, or, a Hughes or Rantanen and one of the Tkachuk boys, or Pasta with like a Thompson or a Stützle or a Timo Meier or a Mitch Marner. I think that would be the way to go. But again, the rankings are there. They're free to check out. Give them a peek and see. It's like I feel like a sneeze is coming on. Whew. It may happen. It's past. All right. My apologies. I need EY. Sometimes a lot of times I need EY, but I have massive allergies, especially at this time of the season. Just chuck up a board, blow my nose a couple times, let EY take the mic. Don't have that here today, so bear with me. I've been doing mock drafts, and Bouchard and Heiskanen are going in the 8th round and Line A in the 12th. How much would you be willing to reach on these players? Again, this is nothing against Lyman. I'm Line A. I'm not reaching on him. I'm sorry. It's a couple of years, right? I'm just not doing this again with Line A. There just seems to be injuries. When he plays volume shooter, go for it. I don't think you need to reach on him anyways. I think the fantasy community is a little sour on Line A. Bouchard and Heiskanen are I don't think they'll be 8th round picks when you actually do a draft. Like mocking, I suggest everybody should mock. You get a good feel, but that's not really how these drafts play out. You just saw Bouchard on that board as like the 5th defenseman off the board. I would maybe reach a touch. I'd be comfortable taking him in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round. Just you're gonna have to see the board play out. Again, I don't like to take defensemen early, but if Bouchard was there and people are drafting others ahead of him, I think he's gonna. Where do I have him ranked? This is my defenseman ranking: Makar, Yossi, Dahlin, Carlson, Bouchard, then Hamilton, then Heiskanen. So again, I like Sergachev a touch more than Hedman, but they're still both top 12 defensemen for me. John Carlson, Sider, Pietrangelo I have ranked pretty high. These are guys that I have ranked pretty high. I touch a lot of categories there. So I don't think you should be reaching on defensemen, but Bouchard's certainly a target of mine. I do want as much Bouchard as I can. Yeah, they do. And I have, I have Bouchard ranked as number 5 for me. What do we got here? Here's a dumb question from Lou. Nothing's ever dumb. It's a great question. This is a really good question. I think in best ball, I have, like I said, a couple more article pieces. I want to share some of my best ball drafts with you guys over at FTM Fantasy. We can do it on the show, but look for it on our website in the draft guide, and you'll see that I stacked, and I'll talk about the importance of stacking. I don't think it's important in redraft. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, because sometimes, if you have a couple players on, like 3 players on one team and they're not performing, then it's like, it feels like your fantasy team is not performing. But stacking like high powered offenses, like get a piece of Jersey, get a piece of the Oilers. It's easier said than done. Like you got to luck into Draisaitl and McDavid. But if you get Draisaitl and McDavid, think about Bouchard, about reaching up Bouchard. Think about Hyman. Think about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Evander Kane a little bit later on. You want to have some of these players on high-powered teams, and they're going to be productive. Lines will change. Things will happen over the course of a season. Not everybody sticks with their lines, but you got a Jason Robertson, maybe you get Rupe Hintz in the 4th or the 5th round, right? Like that's a line that I expect to stick together. Those are 2 guys. Maybe get Miro Heiskanen a little bit later on. You got Dallas's first power play. It will maximize your upside. It's not really needed in redraft leagues. It does split ties for me. Like if I had, I don't know, an Adrian Kempe and Anze Kopitar is sitting there and Matthew Barzal is sitting there, like I will lean with Kopitar. Maybe that's not a good example, but I would lean with a player like, hey, Anze Kopitar is going to play with Kempe on the first line and on the first power play. And I would lean with that because I already have that guy, and that will help me out a little bit. Getting a defenseman on first power plays, go a long way as well to some of your stacks. But I think it's important, certainly in best ball, because it's like football. You want to maximize your upside, your potential. When these guys go off, that's good for you. And it certainly is good for you in football as well. Brzis, welcome back. DBC is back. Let's go. Good afternoon, Means, and everybody. Let's get going here. Brzis, in a league where we start with 85 million. Oh, these leagues are fun. Fantrax, I do a couple of these with EY, and you have 85 million. Is this you're using cap? This is the exact league it looks like for me. I'm in a very, very similar format. Guys like Marner are on the waiver wire because he's making $11 million and it's just not valuable, right? You got to fit your squad in at sub 85. So getting friendly contracts, guys on rookie deals, guys with, like Jack Hughes, $8+ million for the next 7 years. Like that's a guy that, is a really good player in that format. And there's some guys out there that, have some good contracts as well. Yeah, not too bad. Like I had Cole Caulfield, it was like 800K, and now this year he's like 7-8, and it's tough, man. He better score, right? And he better stay healthy because they're tough to hold an $8 million player who's like really one dimensional, and like Caulfield is. It's like he'll still shoot, but depends on your format. So each player drafted goes off their actual NHL cap using AAV bonuses, cap friendly site. It's tough. It really is tough. 15 players max, 4 defense, minimal 3 points. For the goal, 2 points for the apple. It's tough. It's definitely a different format. Yeah, it's really cool. I highly recommend it for everybody. EY actually wanted to have a Dangle Bet Celly draft like that for us. Maybe we can do it and just miss the first couple weeks of the season with the family here. Okay, let's we've gone about 50 minutes, and I don't think I've told you any of my favorite targets. So let's get into some of my favorite targets. Of course, links to the kit inside the description of this video, where you can see more detail and more targets. Can only fit so many on the board. I wanted to stay away from like first couple rounds, but I do have a couple here that I just have to get, and we had them last year, so it carries over into this year. And I don't think we need to get into reasoning behind Jack Hughes or Tage Thompson. I think it's possible that you could start your draft with Jack Hughes or Tage Thompson. I think it's possible that even though you saw Hughes go 5th overall in the draft we showed, I think getting him potentially end of the first, early second, it's possible. Tage Thompson should be there available for you in the second. I think a good fallback option there would be Elias Pettersson. Quiet 100-point season from Elias Pettersson, a shooter. I believe in the breakout. There may be a little bit of regression from him, but I like him. And Kuzmenko's not on this board either, but I like him as well. As you can see, I really like all the Devils. Like Timo Meier, it's going to take time, right? They acquired him. It's basically playoff time, and into the playoffs, he was bouncing around. It's going to take some time to find some chemistry, whether it's alongside Nico Hischier, who I also like is a great target, or alongside Jack Hughes. I think we'll see some sort of like Jesper Bratt, Hughes, and Toffoli, with Mercer at times getting inside the top 6. And then we see everyone's just slotted in their good spots. Like Palat's not a top 6 forward, right? He's more suited for a bottom 6 role, and now he will. You grab Tyler Toffoli, who's a proven goal scorer. Toffoli has scored everywhere that he's ever played, right? He's got 3 20-goal seasons. He had 3 with LA. He scored 6 in 10 games in the smallest sample size ever with the Canucks when he was traded there. He had 37 in 89 games with the Canadiens. He had 34 with the Flames last year, and now he moves to a high-powered offense with the Devils, where it's either alongside Jack Hughes or alongside Nico Hischier on the first power play, the trigger man. He's just a goal scorer, and you're not spending a high draft pick on him. I'm a big fan. And Timo Meier, again, like this is another guy who's a proven goal scorer. He loves to shoot the puck, and I think he'll find chemistry with some of these Devils forwards this year. A full training camp with some of these players, and his first full season with the Devils. Rope Hintz is, again, not breaking any news here. I just think he's going a little bit later than he should in drafts. I mean, another 30 goals, a 37 goal season after last year, back-to-back seasons now, 37 goals, and he missed 9 games. So he could have had 40, an impressive 43 points in 41 games in 2021, 72 and 80 games in 2021, 2022. So like he's setting, he set career highs with 75 points in 73 games last season. So he's doing like, it's a large enough sample size now over the past couple of seasons where he's putting up points, and he took his game to another level in the playoffs, 10 goals and 24 points in 19 games. He averaged over 3 shots per game in the playoffs and 2.5 in the regular season. Sometimes these guys have really good playoffs, and then, the draft price the following year is a little bit pricey, but I don't think that's the case here with Rupe Hintz. Tim Stützle, I think he's a superstar. I think he's not talked enough about being in the superstar kind of range. I think where he went in this draft, where was it? Early second in this draft. I was hoping he would fall back towards me. It just didn't happen, but he broke out last season, 39 goals, 90 points, 3rd overall pick, ton of speed, ton of skill, loves to shoot, sneaky in bangers leagues because he throws his body around. He's got some hits there. 17 power play goals, 54 points in the man advantage over the last 2 years, 114 hits last season, 239 in the last 2 years. So a big boost in ice time. Went from 18 minutes a game as a sophomore to 21 minutes per game last year, which included 23 minutes per game over his final 22 games. I understand Josh Norris didn't play, and if Josh Norris does play, like maybe Josh Norris is on that first line with Brady Tkachuk all year. But either way, the Sens are loaded inside the top 6. I really like Jake Batherson as a breakout candidate as well and a good target. So there's a lot of good players in Ottawa's top six, and Stützle's a really good player in his own right. So I'm a big fan. Adrian Kempe, you guys know, I've just been talking about Kempe over the past couple of years. If you didn't buy the 35 goals in 2021, you got to buy the 41 goals last year, 18 minutes in back-to-back seasons, 247 shots, 250 shots over the last 2 years. One of the best releases in the game, not afraid to use it. He's also given managers 100 plus hits in each of the last 2 seasons, so good in those bangers leagues as well. And at least 9 power play goals in 3 straight campaigns. We'll talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois in a little bit, but I don't think that's going to hurt Adrian Kempe with Kopitar on that first line. And what I've seen from the Kings in the preseason is PLD is kind of the odd man out on that first power play at the moment. But Kempe, Alex Tuch, right? Like Kempe, these guys are just going too late, and they're shooters. Tuch career high 36 goals, 79 points last year. It's kind of what we expect in his first full season in Buffalo. Like, he was a third line player and a second line power play player in Las Vegas, or with the Vegas Golden Knights rather. And in Buffalo, you saw him hit career highs in power play points of 20 shots, 218 ice time over 19 minutes per game. He's a top winger. And in Vegas, he only played 16 minutes per game, and he was on that second power play. He averaged over 3 minutes per game on the power play in Buffalo. Great chemistry with Tage Thompson, who we like. So he's a certain target of mine. Clayton Keller is, I think, a guy that falls down draft boards here because of the team that he plays for. But don't let the logo on the chest confuse you. Keller is a stud, right? Don't let that fool you. He's a really strong target in drafts. And like most players here, they're fresh off career seasons, but I'm buying what I saw. 37 goals, dished out 49 assists, registered 223 shots, and over 20 minutes of ice time. It's all career highs. 19 goals at 5-5 is a big takeaway. From January 1st to the end of the regular season, only Nathan MacKinnon and David Pastrnak had more 5-5 goals than Clayton Keller's 19, and Pasta and MacKinnon both had 21. He's also third behind those two in 5-5 points over that span, 35 in 47 games. It's 5-5 points. Strong 5-5 play has me buying. The winger won't provide any hits, but it doesn't matter. A volume shooter, quite 149 points over his last 149 games. And Arizona's got some skilled players. I liked their offseason. We're going to see some of their players that they drafted, like Logan Cooley and stuff, inside their lineup. Barrett Hayton had the breakout campaign in the second half. I'm definitely buying that as well. Clayton Keller's a good target. Zach Hyman is just... he may not touch the career highs that he did last year, the 36 goals, 47 assists, 83 points, 15 power play goals, 26 power play points, 276 shots, 20 minutes per game, all career highs for him. But there really isn't a category that he can't touch, right? He touches a lot of categories, which we like. He's linked to McDavid or Draisaitl, either 5-5 or on that first power play. So like Lou Testa asked earlier about stacking, is it important? Oilers are obviously a top stack, but if you can get Hyman, if you're lucky enough to get the first or second pick with McDavid or Draisaitl, getting a Hyman or Bouchard does go a long way. You got the Oilers stack, which you got to feel good about because they're going to score a lot of goals. Cole Caulfield here on this list, one Hab, of course. There's like 3 Habs that I would target: Caulfield, Matheson, and Nick Suzuki. But Caulfield, he's a sniper, he's a goal scorer, and if he plays a full season, he'll flirt with 40. Tyler Bertuzzi, I really like the Leafs offseason. I know they got a lot of dudes on 1-year contracts. I think the Leafs are going to make some noise this year, guys. I really do. But obviously, you got to see it to believe it. But Tyler Bertuzzi he's a player that, he's been good, right? He was good in Detroit. He scored some goals in Detroit. He contributed with the Boston Bruins in a top 6 role around some really good players. And he's going to have a top 6 role in Toronto. You can go back to, Detroit wasn't great for him, 14 and 29. Those are the points in 29 games. But when he was flipped to Boston, he was immediately scoring and he was producing. Why? Because he was around good players. And that's going to be the case here in Toronto as well. 16 points in 21 regular season games with the Bruins and 10 in 7 playoff games. Now in Toronto, I feel like it's either Tavares or Matthews that he's going to play with. He probably won't get any power play one time, but it's possible. Either way, the second power play may just be him and William Nylander. He has 3 20-goal seasons on the NHL resume. He scored 30 in 2021. So this is a good landing spot for him, and he could be one of those kind of banger players for you as well. And then Taylor Hall is on this list as, a guy in Boston who is just second power play and on the third line. Immediately, he's going to get first-line minutes. He's going to play next to Connor Bedard. I love the landing spot for him. It's pure opportunity. Injuries have hurt him a little bit over the past couple of years, but I don't think he's going to have the same type of season he did with the Devils. But when he was with the Devils, he was playing a lot, right? He was first power play, first line. He was shooting a ton. He had a great season. I could see anywhere north of 60 points for him, and I could see him living in the 19 to 20 minute range. He's been a volume shooter, so he's going to be a guy that I'm going to attack right away in terms of shot props. This is a guy that I think could average 3 shots per game. We'll have some games with 4 or 5 shots. He's not getting drafted early. Don't play with plus minus. And if you do, don't worry about it. It's one category. Don't worry about these players that are on bad teams. You don't want to draft them because they may have a bad plus minus rating. It's a silly stat. It's a stupid statistic. And I don't think anybody should play with it in fantasy hockey. It's just absolutely ludicrous that people play with it. I mean, don't base any analysis or advice on plus minus. Don't even think about that category. Other guys that are not on this list that I like, let's see. Nico Hischier, Alex DeBrincat, Evander Kane, Andrei Kuzmenko, Wyatt Johnson, Drake Batherson. I'm taking the value with these old vets on new teams and Vladimir Tarasenko, Blake Wheeler, and Matt Duchene. I like Owen Tippett. I like Ivan Barbashev. I like Matthias Michelli. We'll get into him in a touch. I like Charlie McAvoy, Kirill Marchenko. I like for defensemen. We'll slide over and look at defensemen. These are you see only 2 here in the top. Again, I have nothing against Carlson or I don't know. Actually, you know what? I kind of do. Like I went through it with the mock, right? We already kind of touched on it. Like I'm bypassing. I play in a lot of bangers league, so I'm bypassing Adam Fox. I'm bypassing Quinn Hughes. Dougie Hamilton I like for sure. Yossi I like. Hill McCarr I like. I like these guys. I'm just not spending that top pick on them. That's not how I roll. So these are defensemen that the top 2 are guys inside my top 5 that I am willing to grab if Darlene fell to the 3rd and Bouchard is on my radar in the 4th, 5th. Like he's a guy that I would certainly consider a little bit earlier, especially if I had some of those Oilers. Vince Dunn had the breakout season last year. I'm buying. Like I just think he's such a smooth skater on that first power play. I like the Kraken overall as the squad. He may not have 70 points, but you know he may flirt with similar numbers as last year. The breakout last year, and it really didn't come on until the second half of the season. Drew Doughty, I just feel like doesn't really get a ton of respect. I think that he still has a lot to offer. Sean Jersey is on this board as well. I think he's in for a breakout campaign. I Daily Faceoff will tell you that Jersey's on the second power play unit. I fully believe that he's going to be on that first power play unit. I've always thought that the second that he was acquired from LA, and I just thought, okay, here we go. Like that's a guy that is going to break out this season. He's going to get more ice time than he's ever handled. He's got some liability issues in his own end, but he's got some offensive upside. And Arizona's going to score some goals, right? Like Clayton Keller and Logan Cooley this year, Michelli. You got Barrett Hayton, and they brought in Zucker from Pittsburgh. They're going to score some goals, and Sean Jersey is going to be on that first power play unit. So he's a guy that I think will break out this year. And Jacob Tricken is a guy that I think will be on that first power play unit in Ottawa. At times we may see a little Sanderson. We may see some Thomas Chabot. Chabot has not been able to stay healthy over the past couple of years. Chikrin's had some issues as well. But last year, Chikrin, it was a small sample size, but he overtook that first power play. And that's kind of what I expect. I'm off of Chabot. I've been a big Chabot guy over the past couple of years, but I'm off of him. And I think that the Sens would rather see him, log some 5 and 5 minutes and have Chikrin and Sanderson have some power play time. Of course, Chabot's got a really nice shot, and we'll see how that does play out. But I'm team Chikrin here this year over Chabot. As for Doughty, 27 power play points last year, 9 goals, 43 assists. He had at least 100 shots, 100 hits, and 100 blocks. So he touches a lot of categories for you that way. Michael Matheson. I have a little bit to say about Michael Matheson. He is one of my favorite targets here. It's nothing to do with the Blue Blanc Rouge. Those that know me, you guys know that I love the Habs, but it really is I just tell you how it is. I think the Habs will be a bottom 5 team this year. I think they have a lot of young defensemen. They rolled like 6 rookie defensemen last year. Matheson didn't start the season with the Habs. Like he was, but he was hurt. So like, for example, Yahoo has this guy ranked at 466. I took him in that draft that I showed you. Actually, it wasn't that draft. It was a different draft over in high stakes leagues as the 25th defenseman off the board. I think a lot of people are snoozing on what Matheson did in the second half of last year. 34 points last season, but he only played 48 games. 48 games. He had 34 points in 48 games. That's 60 points. That's 60 points over the course of the season. There's not a lot of defensemen that you can count on for 60 points. Not only was he great in the second half of the season, I mean, he was shooting the puck a ton. It was the first full season with the Habs. I told you he missed the first bit of the season, didn't make his debut until November. And the former Penguin, 8 points in his first 17 games, getting, used to the teammates, used to the coaching staff, not getting a ton of ice time, but he had 26 points over the final 31 games. Now, that's not a pace that I think he can continue, 26 and 31, but he averaged 25 minutes per game over those 31 games. That is a number that I think he can flirt with. And that's what it's all about, is it not? Usage, opportunity, volume. Even on a bad team, he's going to get a lot of ice time. He ranked inside the top 5 among defensemen in leagues with hits, blocks, shots, power play points, goals, and assists. Inside the top 5, and he was a top 10 defenseman over the final 2 months of last season. There's no reason to think he won't lead the team in ice time with power play 1 duties. Matheson's going to pile up some shots, some blocks, some hits, and I think he's going to flirt with 60 points. That would be a breakout, and that would be a borderline top 15 ranking at the defense position. And he is not getting drafted as a top 30 defenseman, is not even close to it. So as long as that power play with Suzuki and Caulfield and Kirby Dach and Monahan and Matheson, he's going to put up some points. So I'm a big Matheson guy. I love the way that he skates and he can move up and down the ice. He's going to shoot the puck a ton. I think he's a really, really fine fantasy hockey defenseman target. Luke Hughes, I don't want to reach on him. I see some people reaching on him. Like, he should not be going as a top 20 guy. I still think Hamilton will be on that first power play unit, but Luke Hughes will be on it at times as well. I don't think he's gonna fully overtake Hamilton, but if anything happened to Hamilton, that's where we could see Luke Hughes take his stride. But I am certainly in on him. I want to have some shares, and I do have some best ball shares of him already in my New Jersey stacks, because I think that's a really good team to stack. Rasmus Sandin, really took off towards the end of last season, but Carlson was sidelined. Carlson's going to get that first power play spot back, but I could see Washington rolling out. I know that they want to have Ovechkin on the point, but I could see, a little bit of Sandin and a little bit of Carlson on that first power play unit. Pacioretty's not going to be with the team and, until November, December, maybe. Again, another Achilles injury he's recovering from. Ovechkin's going to be on that unit, and Backstrom and Kuznetsov here and there. But Rasmus Sandin, Washington showed that they want to use him, and the Leafs weren't really using him that way, right? He wasn't getting any PP one time. He kind of exploded when he went to, and it's a pick that's not going to cost you a whole lot, right? So maybe like a late round pick. Other defensemen I have as late round picks, like Jared Spurgeon. I think Addison's a guy that will probably man the first power play, but Spurgeon touches a lot of different categories for you, Bangers Leagues. Shea Theodore here on this list. I mean, Pietrangelo is that Bangers League guy, and they always rotate through him and Pietrangelo on that first power play. But I love myself some Theodore. It's just such a smooth skater, and he goes through some really nice streaky moments as a shooter and a power play specialist there. And Cam Fowler, towards the end of drafts, in leagues with blocks, he'll help you out there a little bit. Here's some goalie targets that I'm into. And again, like, I like Shesterkin, but I would rather spend the draft capital on Sorokin, Odger, and Georgiev. So when it comes to goalie strategies, especially in best ball leagues, I think you gotta be aggressive. You're not going to win if you have mediocre goalies or average goalies. Injuries are going to happen, like Vasilevsky. Maybe they don't live up to expectations like Vasilevsky last year, or like Shesterkin last year as well. But we were in on Georgiev last year as the breakout candidate, and he finished as a top 5 fantasy hockey goalie. And there's no reason to think that he won't this year on a loaded Avs team. Last year was Allmark, Sorokin, Ottinger, Georgiev, Gustafsson, Hellebuck, Samsonov, Swayman, Shesterkin, Vasilevsky. Those were your top goalies last season. So even though Vasilevsky and Shesterkin didn't finish 1 and 2, they were still fine. They didn't hurt you. They were still goalies that had over 30 wins, save percentage over .915, both of them. sub 7.27 goals against average. Like they're still fine targets. Now, of course, Vasilevsky isn't now, and Shesterkin is fine, but Sorokin to me is the goal. Like he's my number one guy. Like I'm buying what I'm seeing from him over the past couple of years. I mean, 6 shutouts last year, 9.24 save percentage, 31 wins, 2.34 goals against average. He's a guy with Jake Onger and Georgiev that I don't mind reaching on a touch. I think in best ball, as I mentioned, reach a little bit more, have some stability in goal, get yourself a top 5 goalie on a good team that's going to rattle off 30 plus wins. It won't hurt you anywhere. And they're going to get the majority of the starts. In head-to-head formats, I'd maybe wait it out a little bit. Wait it out a touch on Ilya Samsonov. He had a great season last year. Why is he going so late? Like Samsonov is going as... These are the goalies that are going ahead of Samsonov over in Yahoo. Marc-Andre Fleury, Devin Levi, Korpisalo, Frederik Andersen, Sergei Bobrovsky, Jeremy Swayman. Are you kidding me with Jeremy Swayman? Like Jeremy Swayman had some good numbers last year, but he is well outside my top 20 at the position. There's no reason for you to be reaching on Jeremy Swayman. Oh my goodness. It's just like, it's sickening to kind of see it. And I have seen it so far in drafts. Ilya Samsonov had a really nice campaign, 27 wins, a 919 save percentage, 4 shutouts. Yeah, he's had some injury issues, but I mean, the Leafs bought low on him as a former first round pick and they won. They won that trade, and he is a really good goalie, and the Leafs are going to rattle off 40, 45 wins, maybe even 50. Like they may be that team that flirts with records this year. Like they're that good, and Samsonov is a really good goalie. Philip Gustafsson, he's another good goalie, right? Last year, a 2.10 goals against average, a 931 save percentage. He had 3 shutouts. He had 22 wins. He split time with Marc-Andre Fleury. They went, game for game. And that hurt Minnesota in the playoffs. Fleury was not good. Fleury is a lot older now. Gustafsson, had some good numbers in Ottawa too. I know it was a small sample size, but he had a 933 save percentage as a rookie. He's a real good goalie. And Minnesota is missing a couple guys on defense. It's a little bit of a different squad, but they're stingy. They don't give up a lot of high quality chances. They're well coached. And I don't think we'll see goalie for goalie this year. Marc-Andre Fleury is a goalie that I would not draft, and Gustafsson's a guy that I would draft. Here are my goalie rankings. If it's I don't have the board, but the free link here: Sorokin, Shesterkin, Georgiev, Ottinger, Hellebuck, Saros, Samsonov, Gustafsson, Frederik Andersen, and then Linus Ullmark. And I'm not even comfortable taking him. And I know people will take him as a top 5 goalie based on last year of Vezina candidate. Not doing it. Let somebody else draft Linus Ullmark in your league. Let somebody else draft Jeremy Swayman in your league. Boston was historically good last year. They're not going to finish as top 10 goalies this season. I got Joonas Korpisalo there. I'm a big Korpisalo guy. I think, there's been some injury history, of course, with him, but he could be on the sleeper list. He could be on the breakout list. He could be on the target list. I just want him. And you saw that I drafted him in this mock as my second goalie, along with Gustafsson. So Korpisalo, a 920 save percentage in his rookie campaign, showed promise after that, was a big reason that, why the Blue Jackets beat the Bolts that year, upset them after that, that sweep. He could never really put it together with some injuries and bad play in front of him, timeshares in goal, but the Sens went out and paid him. He's clearly going to be the guy, the number one guy. He played a wicked start for him last night in Halifax, 40 some odd saves at the shutout against Crosby and company. The Pens were rolling out all their studs. They paid him as a number one goalie. They're starving for some stability in net. The Senators' structure isn't fantastic. He may not have a sub 3 goals against average, but he's going to have a 920 save percentage. He's going to have north of 30 wins. He's 7-3-1 with a 921 save percentage and a 2.13 goals against average in 11 games with the Kings. I think LA should have kept him, but of course, they're strapped now. Like the big addition was Pierre-Luc Dubois. They decided to go another way in goal. But he's really good. So I think he's a good target. And I took him in this mock draft ahead of Frederik Andersen. I think Andersen, the difference between Andersen and Korpisalo, clearly Andersen is on a better team. Like there's no question about that. But this is another guy that always seems to be hurt. And the Canes are so good at 5-5 that you have to think of if your league accounts for saves, like it's Korpisalo without a question. Like he's going to get more saves this year than Anderson. Anderson has these games where, Carolina only allows like 22 shots. And if he allows 2 goals or 3 goals on 22 shots, the save percentage is not great. He may get you the win. The goals against average will probably be sub 2.5 for Anderson, but the save percentage may just be like 9.10 or 9.15, where Anderson or other guys like Korpisalo will see a lot of rubber. The saves will pile up. He's going to start most of the games that he can handle, while Carolina may just try to okay, we got Frederik Andersen, we got to hang on to him. You got Ranta there, you got Kochetkov and things like that. So I'm staying clear of Anderson, and I like Korpisalo here. Adin Hill, I don't expect him to be the same goalie that he was in the playoffs, but there's no reason why he should be going as like goalie 20 or 21 over in Yahoo leagues. I think it makes for a pretty good duo if you went pretty cheap. Like you could punt goalies altogether. This is a strategy that you can take. You can punt goalies altogether, and you could just roll with a Vegas duo, an Anderson and an Adin Hill. You could roll with a Hill and a Logan Thompson. You could roll with an Anderson and a Ranta or a Kochetkov a little bit later on. You could roll with both Jersey goalies, Vanacek or Schmid. I think Schmid is the guy that I would rather have. They're kind of going neck and neck. I would say that Vanacek is probably the guy to start the season as the lead goalie. But I think that Schmid could overtake him. Like he's knocking on the door, right? The Devils are a team that they have 50 win upside. And Vanacek had a great season last year. 33 wins, 2.45 goals against average, 911 save percentage across 52 games, first season in New Jersey. His career best. Great numbers. But Schmid had a 922 save percentage, which was better, and a 2.13 goals against average, which was better over 18 games. He went 9-5-2. He was also the better goalie for the Devils in the playoffs. He had a 921 save percentage in the playoffs, a 2.33 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. And Vanacek was an 825 save percentage, a 4.64 goals against average. I don't say that's everything, but Schmid, I think, is a better goalie. I think he's sneaky good. So he's a guy that you can take a little bit later on. They may split time. It may be similar to Minnesota where they go almost game for game, or, they ride the hot hand or whatever, but Schmid's good. He's going to get some starts. 5-5 save percentage was 924, which was 16th among goalies, with 700 minutes of ice time and ahead of Vanacek. Devin Levi, don't reach. I see some people out there that have him as a top 10 goalie. Like the Sabres still have some issues defensively. They're starving for some stability in net as well. I think this kid is, I think he's the real deal, but I'm not saying he's going to put up. I think like in dynasty leagues and keeper leagues, like he should be as a top 10 goalie. And maybe in a couple of years, we're talking about him as like a top 5, top 7 goalie, but I don't know if it'll happen as early as this year. And Jacob Markstrom's a guy, and I hear, what do you mean? Why would I do that? The Flames are selling house. They're no good. They still have good players on that squad. Defensively, they really do still have good players, right? And Hannafin and Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Anderson, or there's still some really good players on that team. Jacob Markstrom probably isn't as good as what he was 2 years ago. He's definitely not as bad as what he was last year. I expect him to be better at 5-5. Like this is a stingy Flames team that didn't give up a whole lot of rubber at 5-5. I'm just saying that is your last pick. It can't hurt you. And if he doesn't start strong, you can just move on and drop him. Like if I started with a Sorokin or an Oettinger or a Georgiev, and I got myself like a Schmid or a Hill later on, maybe my third goalie is Jacob Markstrom. I'd rather him my third than my second. But ultimately my strategy is to get one of these top 5 goalies in Sorokin, Oettinger, Georgiev. If I don't get them, not the end of the world. The next tier for me would be Samsonov and Gustafsson. The next tier after that, I'm getting involved with Korpisalo. Hill, you can get late. Phoenix Copley is another guy that they got. Cam Talbot. I think it's an interesting duo to roll with, Cam Talbot and Copley. But for Phoenix here, really good season last year in LA, and I would expect him to be the lead. And Cam Talbot has not shown us that he can stay healthy over the past couple of years. And for Phoenix, 37 games last season. He had a 24-6-3 record. How about that for a record? Nobody's talking enough about him. 24-6-3 last year, a 2.64 goals against average, a 903 save percentage. Not fantastic. The save percentage, not great, but the Kings are good. They're probably one of the deepest teams down the middle of the ice, and with Anze Kopitar and Pierre-Luc Dubois and Philippe Deneau. So you know that they're going to win a lot of games. Kings are a really good squad. Really, really good squad. I like Phoenix a lot. And Stuart Skinner, not willing to reach on Stuart Skinner. I would expect a better season from Jack Campbell, but the Oilers are loaded. They're going to win a lot of games as well, and Stuart Skinner's a decent little option there. All right, what do we got? I got some sleepers and some busts to show you guys as well, and then if you guys have any final questions, we could wrap up. Here's my sleepers. They could be under targets. These are guys that I still have a lot of shares of, but I put them in this sleepers category. I think I have a couple of these guys in the breakout category as well. Gabriel Velarde, he was part of that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. I think he's one of the best kept secrets in the NHL, and I do believe he's bound for a breakout campaign here. Pierre-Luc Dubois is gone. Blake Wheeler is out of town. I think we'll see Velarde play on that first line with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. And if not, he'll play on the second line. He is bound to touch career highs across the board. The bottom line is he will play in a top 6 role, which wasn't the case last year in LA. So whether it's Kyle Connor or Scheifele on the first line, maybe first player, I think he's a borderline must player to own. He's not getting drafted early, and he's listed as a center. Yahoo, he'll get winger eligibility. I think that, he'll be a player that will top the 15 minutes per game that he played last season and the 9 power play points that he had last season. These, I think he'll shatter both numbers. And he is coming off a career season, 23 goals, 41 points in 63 games last season. And I think the Jets made it all right in that trade. We talked about Hall already. Taylor Hall, was on that list a little bit earlier that we showed you, just, pure opportunity, ice time usage, shot attempts, shots, first power play, on the third line and second power play in Boston. So he's going to be next to Bedard. It's going to be a long season for Chicago, but the usage should be there for him. Wyatt Johnson, I don't view rookies as breakout candidates. So you're not seeing any rookies on, any part of the articles that have like breakouts, but you see some here as sleepers. But for Wyatt Johnson, I just, 24 goals as a 19-year-old kid is just super impressive. And I thought he's one of the better players in the playoffs last year. There were times where I think a majority of the playoffs at 5-5, he was, first in expected goals and shot attempts. He was right there with hints. And, at times he looked a little bit better than Jason Robertson. Now, that second line was really good with Jamie Benn and with Evgeny Donanov, but we could see that split up a little bit. Matt Duchene is on the squad now, and Tyler Seguin and Matt Duchene probably are like quote unquote third line and second power play. But Wyatt Johnson, if he's on that second power play, with Duchene and Seguin or just Duchene, it could be an uptick there for him. I just think he's a really, really strong player. I got 2 Blue Jackets here for Troy. I mean, Kent Johnson, 16 goals, 40 points, 12 on the power play in his first full season in the NHL. Only averaged 14 minutes per game, but played 15:28 in March, 17:44 in April. Just too skilled not to receive another boost in ice time. He did open up last year on the first line. He didn't open up last year in the first line, but there's a real chance he's on that first line this season. And Columbus is an improved squad on the back end, and I think they got some sneaky forwards offensively as well. Marchenko, impressive 21 goals in his rookie campaign, only played 59 games. 16% shooting rate, maybe a touch high, but he's got a heavy shot. He's certainly a sniper. Only 4 assists and -23 rating. But again, don't buy into the plus minus. Who cares about that stat? And the assists will come because Columbus is a much better squad here. Matthews Nyes is on this list. Some Leaf fans in your league may reach on him a touch, but Yahoo, ESPN, the ADP is really, really low. So I view him as a sleeper. Sleeper is just a catchy term. It's a catchy little just clickbait term, right? And I think sleeper is just a player that will outdo their average draft position. Heck, it could be last year. It was Jack Hughes was a sleeper for me, but he was a 4th round pick, and Tage Thompson was like an 8th round pick, and these guys outperformed their ADPs. Like I think that Matthew Nyes will as well. I mean, it's a very small sample size last year, but 4 points, 7 shots, 15 hits, and 7 games into the playoffs. Averaging 13 minutes per game. And inside a top 6 role. As I fully believe that even though he only has like 3 regular season games on his resume, that this guy is in for a top 6 role in Toronto. And Jonathan Drouin on this list as well. New blood for Jonathan Drouin. And you remember the 2013 NHL draft. McKinnon was the number 1 pick. Drouin was the number 3 pick. Both of those guys won Memorial Cup together with the Halifax Mooseheads in 2012 and 13. Man, they were awesome. In fact, Duren was better than McKinnon at the time. Everybody knew McKinnon was going to be the better player, and he should have been the first overall pick, and he was. But they combined for 73 goals and 180 points that season, and I fully believe that with Gabriel Landeskog hurt, and who knows, man, if this guy's going to play again this season, that Duran will get an opportunity to play on the first line with Nathan McKinnon, and he's fast enough to keep up. Believe it or not, he's still got a lot of wheels. He's a guy that doesn't like to shoot. He likes to pass it, and McKinnon likes to shoot it. So I think we'll see them together on the first line at 5-5. And on the power play as well. Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha, these are decent targets. I mean, Zacha had arguably the breakout last year, but I think Charlie Coyle is more of a shooter, and he'll play with Brad Marchand, and he'll play with Jake DeBrusk. And I think he's in for, he's another guy. He's probably like one of the better third-line centers in the NHL over the past couple of years, but he's going to get a role with Krejci and with Bergeron gone. So I'm into Coyle outperforming the ADP, and it's a pick that you could do or have a little bit later on in your draft. Connor Brown is a guy I've noticed people are really reaching on a little bit, but he is expected to open up the season next to Connor McDavid, so I totally get it, and I think you want a piece of the Oilers, have some exposure. This is like some best ball exposure. You make sure you get Brown. Limited to 4 games last season, issues staying on the ice over the past couple of years, but when he plays, he produces. He has two 20-goal seasons. He also has experience playing with McDavid. These two were line mates in 2012, 2014 in the OHL, Erie Otters, and they combined for 145 goals and 416 points. 416 points in 2 seasons. You know what you're thinking? It was all McDavid. Yeah, Brown did his part. He had 73 goals and 197 of those points in the 2 years. Don't get it twisted, right? 50, 60 points would be a very, very strong season for him. I don't view him as a 30-goal season and a 70-point player. If he can stay healthy, he'll get 50 or 60 points, but he's a good player to think in the middle part of your draft, the back part of your draft potentially, and a guy to certainly stack. Logan Cooley, second-line center. I think the Habs should have picked him first overall, personally, but I don't think Barrett Hayton's going to lose that job. Hayton's a good target. I think he's viewed as an undervalued player, as a potential sleeper as well. But he is, he's certainly skilled. Could see some Zucker there with him on the line. It's possible, maybe, if Hayton, doesn't back it up, that the future is Cooley and Clayton Keller. But Logan Cooley, I wouldn't reach, but he is, he's going to be fun to watch. I already see one highlight reel goal from him already. As for Michelli, very impressive rookie season, which consisted of 11 goals, 49 points in 64 games. He had 22 points in 32 games and played over 14 minutes per game in the first half of the season. Compared to 27 points over his final 32 games, and he averaged 16 minutes per game. So he had a boost in ice time. I'd like to see him shoot a little bit more. He did have a nice little snipe in a preseason game that I watched in Melbourne, but that may come eventually. He's got a really good shot, and I think Arizona's got some nice little players there. Lucas Reichel is on this list as well. I think he's the second-line center probably in Chicago this season, but we could see him on that first power play, and we could see him on that first line with Bedard. As of right now, I think they'll probably open up with Taylor Hall, Tyler Johnson, but Tyler Johnson hasn't shown us that he can play a full season at this point of his career. So we could see them load up with like a Reichel Hall, Reichel maybe on the wing. I think they want to have him as the second line center, but we could see him with Bedard. Certainly on the power play, I would expect to see that. Here are some players I'm avoiding. Brad Marchand, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Mark Stone, Max Domi, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, Brent Burns, Linus Ullmark, and Sergei Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky was great in the playoffs. It's like, you can't buy into that. Like, it's just, we could see a little bit of a split. Bobrovsky, he hasn't been fantastic really over the past couple of years. He's had some moments in a great playoff run. But I'm not drafting him as a top 10 goalie. We already talked about Ullmark. Brent Burns, just, 36 years old now. And, they probably have the best decor in the NHL, but bringing in Dmitry Orlov, bringing in Tony DeAngelo, those are guys that can handle power play minutes. So maybe they scale back a little bit Brent Burns. Maybe he's not playing as much. I still think he's the first guy on that first PP unit, but it's possible, right? Because Orlov can do it. And we know Tony D'Angelo can do it as well. McAvoy, we addressed it, just a better real-life NHL defenseman than a fantasy defenseman. Didn't even finish as a top 25 fantasy defenseman last year, and the Bruins have unloaded a lot of talent on that squad. Quinn Hughes, just know your settings. If it's just straight assists, goals, points, and power play points and things like that, like, again, he is a good target. But if you are playing with hits and blocks, and I would just avoid him, because in high stakes leagues, I said this earlier, he finished 34th in fantasy points per game, and he was outside the top 15 at the position. Good player, Canucks fans. Just stop it. Don't come at me with this Quentin Hughes stuff. It really just depends on your setting. Evgeny Kuznetsov, I just always avoid him. I just don't like pass first guys. Max Domi, the career season was in Montreal, and he did some career things last year. I mean, 49 points in 60 games with Chicago before getting traded to Dallas. But in Dallas, he only had 7 points in 20 games. Why? Because he went from playing first line to third line. Like, he played 18 minutes per game in Chicago, which is the most he ever played. But in Dallas, he played 16 minutes because they were loaded. The Leafs are loaded too. There may be times where he's maybe he's playing the wing in the first or second line, but I think the Leafs want to have him as their third line center. So he's not going to be first PP. I don't think every day role inside the top 6. So like, career high 18 power play points with Chicago last year, just one with Dallas. Like, these are things that the numbers will be more Dallas Domi as opposed to Chicago Domi. So good player to get, like, love it, right? His dad's there. His dad was there. It's going to be fun. He's going to bring a lot of energy. Like I said, I like the Leafs. A lot of these guys on 1-year deals. It's kind of like prove it deals. Mark Stone, I mean, the guy, it came out later on that he had a hat trick in the game-clinching Game 5 Stanley Cup. They won the cup on him scoring a hat trick with a broken wrist, apparently. Like, he's one of the better two-way players in the NHL still. He just doesn't shoot enough for me. And he's missed a lot of games over the years, right? I mean, 55 games played in shortened 2020 season is great, but 43 and 37 games the last 2 seasons. Remarkable to think that he could get that hat trick on the broken wrist, and he's going to be ready to go opening night. But the back injury over the past couple of years, I'm just worried about it. Another case of good real life player, not so great in fantasy. Pierre-Luc Dubois and Brad Marchand. It's just Brad Marchand, the newest captain. I mean, good for him. It's going to be weird to see the C on his chest, but, losing Bergeron, losing Krejci. So you're losing those 2 guys on the power play, and they're both playmakers on that power play. I think Boston's going to take that step back. And Marchand, 67 points in 73 games. Strong showing, but the fewest points he's had since 2015 and 2016. In fact, is that right in my notes? It may be wrong. I want to get the actual numbers here for you, even though you guys can look them up. So Brad Marchand, was it that many points? Yeah, I knew it was. Yeah, 63 points in 73 games. Like, that's really good. But it is the fewest since 2015. And, he really only missed 9 games. Remember, he was going to miss a couple months, but he only missed the 9 games. It's just, you're missing a lot of players now on that team. He's getting drafted ahead of Kyle Connor, Timo Meier in some spots, Alex Tuch, Clayton Keller, JT Miller. These are other guys I would rather have than Brad Marchand. A little bit older now, and I think we'll see a little bit of a regress. As for Pierre-Luc Dubois, 2 very good seasons in Winnipeg, 28 goals and 27 goals, 60 points for the second and third time in his career, and 63 points and 23 power play points last season, the most he ever had. He lived in the 18-minute range, which I think is more than he'll get in LA, and it's more than he got in Columbus. But when you have a guy like Anze Kopitar and Philippe Deneau, who's one of the better two-way centers in the NHL, he's just not going to get that type of ice time. They're going to roll through lines. I like the fact that he's playing with Kevin Fiala. I'm certainly a fan of that. But he looks like he's going to play on that second power play. It's something that he just didn't do in Winnipeg, right? He got all the ice time that he can handle, and he was playing on that first unit. So if he's on that second power play, and we're seeing maybe 16 minutes per game, we're going to see a dip in a lot of numbers, all of production across the board, probably. The power play points for sure. We could maybe see him on that first unit, but it's loaded. You're going to have Kopitar and Kempe on it. You're going to have Doughty on it. You're going to have Fiala on it. In the preseason, they're rolling Victor Arvidsson on that first unit and having Pierre-Luc Dubois on that second unit. And again, they're going to roll through those 3 centers. When they need goals in LA, you'll probably see a little bit more Pierre-Luc Dubois when they're up in games, and you're going up against McDavid and Crosby and other teams with legit centers. Kopitar and Dano are going to get a lot of ice time because those guys are still really, really solid two-way centers. Whew, that was like this is a lot to take in. I will timestamp this for the people that are watching or listening a little bit later to get some stuff, but we'll get out of here with maybe a comment or two if there's any other questions. Troy, Marchenko top line, Columbus making a little bit too no money this year. Yeah, I mean, I really like him as the target. I'm a big fan. Would love to be a part of that Dangle Bet Celly draft. Maybe it may just happen it may just happen after the season. We need EY part of it, and it's hard to link up at the moment. Did the Islanders' average player age over 30 concern you? Yes, average age player 30 years old. Does this concern you? It does. Yeah, I think the Islanders are. I didn't like their offseason at all. They didn't do a whole lot. They didn't bring anybody in, man. They didn't do anything. Like they're really just relying on Sorokin. I think Horvat is a good target, and Barzal's a good target, and Noah Dobson's a good target. But yeah, they're really. They're getting older. Want to see a little bit more from Oliver Wahlstrom. We'll see if maybe he's a sneaky little bounce back candidate. There's not a whole lot of like in Long Island. I think Brock Nelson is underrated. I think he's like a decent target. He's a 30 goal scorer. He could do something there. Anders Lee, but they don't wow me. The top six doesn't wow me, and they needed to make a splash in the offseason. I know there weren't a lot of great offseason, free agents to attack, but I don't know. I needed to do something a little bit more. We'll get out of here on this. I got the something from my old faces, new places, article. So Carlson, we talked about, maybe a slight downtick. Believe it or not, maybe a slight downtick. Still fine. Top 5 defenseman. Alex DeBrincat in Detroit now. An uptick in stock. This is a guy. He's a volume shooter. 40 goal upside. Locked into the first power play. Just wasn't the case all the time in Ottawa. Pierre-Luc Dubois, we talked about him. Downtick. Taylor Hall, uptick in Chicago. Usage rate up. Gabriel Velarde, one of my favorites to draft. Uptick. Matt Duchene, downtick probably. Dallas is a better team than Nashville, but he was getting top line minutes in Nashville. He won't in Dallas. They're going to roll through 3 lines, and it's a loaded squad, but I love the addition from Dallas. Blake Wheeler, I think this is like a sideways move. Daily Faceoff will tell you 3rd line, but I'd be shocked if we didn't see Blake Wheeler either play with Kreider and Mika Zibanejad or with Trocheck and Panarin and on that first power play unit. I'm still not believing in Kako, but I think that Lafreniere is like scratching the surface of like maybe breaking out. So I think Blake Wheeler will be in a top 6 role. And I think he's a good target. He's undervalued for sure, or especially over in Yahoo. Tyler Bertuzzi, uptick, right, to Toronto. Uptick when we're talking about Detroit, and sideways move to Boston, but a good landing spot. Michael Bunting in Carolina, I think he's an okay target. Yeah, Rod Brennamore tends to shake up the lines quite a bit, but we could see him with Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis. Like that's possible. Should play in a top 6 if he can stay out of the box. He's a guy that 23 goals in each of his last 2 seasons, and he knows how to play with really good players. Riley Smith, I like this addition by the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think he'll open up the season playing next to Sidney Crosby, and when Gensel comes back, Gensel will get his spot back, but it's not a lock that Riley Smith will be on the second line. He could be on that first line with Gensel. He's played both wings before. He could play with Crosby and Gensel, and then you could have Malkin and Rust and Raquel. But I would say it's probably more likely that Riley Smith is playing with Malkin and Rust. But either way, top 6, I still think he has a little bit to offer. 20, 25 goals, really good on the PK. I think he led all skaters with 4 shorthanded goals last year, 3 or 4. Vladimir Tarasenko to Ottawa. I like this a little bit more than New York. He's buried on that 3rd line, second power play. I think he's going to find a way to get on that first power play, whether it's with Stützle at 5-5 or Josh Norris, or Claude Giroux can move to the middle. Ottawa's got a top 6 role, and he still has 25 goal upside. Vladimir Tarasenko. Connor Brown in Edmonton, we talked about that uptick. Alex Killorn, I know he's hurt now, but I would never ever consider drafting him. Overpaid and will be overdrafted. Kevin Hayes, I think he could be okay in St. Louis. He got a lot of ice time in Philly. He was overpaid in Philly. He did manage to have a career high 54 points, 16 power play points, and 209 shots over 81 games last year. Wasn't enough for the Flyers to keep them around. If you can find a way to get inside the top 6 there, Robert Thomas is going to play center. Kyrou can play some center. But if you can find a way, like if they move Braden Chen over to the wing, like if Hayes can get on that first power play, which I don't think is possible, but if he can play inside the top 6, right now, I'm seeing that he's playing with Jordan Kyrou. So that may be a little interesting duo there. If he can play with Kyrou or Jacob Vrana, excuse me, if he can play with Vrana or Kyrou, he may be fantasy relevant. Duren's got the uptick to Colorado, right? We talked about that. To Foley's stock uptick in New Jersey, Nyquist in Nashville uptick, Sean Dursey uptick. Stock down would be Domi, Jason Zucker, JT Compher, Tony DeAngelo, Dmitry Orlov. No change. Ryan O'Reilly, Evan Rodriguez, Mike Hoffman to San Jose, Rodriguez to Florida, Ryan O'Reilly to Nashville. Could be an okay target with I'm not really into it, but him and Philip Forsberg should play together at 5-5 and on the power play. And then Klingberg and Jeff Petrie. No real change at all in those two guys. We're going to get out. We basically had gone. We've gone a long time. Hopefully helped you guys with some targets and some sleepers, some busts, talk strategy, goalies, best ball stuff. We'll be here on Thursday. We'll do a little bit more. Thursday will be a betting futures episode. And then next week, we'll be talking about games. We'll be talking about opening night in the NHL with some picks and some props and things like that. So we will talk about a Dangle Bet Celly episode. Hit me up in the comment section. Let me know that you guys are interested, and we just may have to do it, 2 weeks into the season, which will be okay. We'll see. There's always a hot starter, Sue, and people will reach on those players, and we'll talk about that as well when the time does come. Check out the draft kit. It's free. It's live. Rankings, sleepers, busts, breakouts, targets, strategy pieces, and the NHL betting guide will be there we'll be there for you guys tomorrow, and we'll talk about that on Thursday. Thank you guys for taking the time to hang out. We'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.